11 minutes, 15 seconds, and counting. Just a little over 2 minutes remaining before we get to the final build-in hold, a 10-minute build-in hold that comes at the T-minus 9-minute point in the countdown. The crew has had a small problem with the comparison of the backup program. That's a software program in the flight computers, and we'll be re-examining that during the 10-minute hold at the T-minus 9-minute point. They are in the process right now of conducting another abort advisory check. This is that backup system which tells them if there is a problem, should they lose the communications with the Launch Control Center. The booster test conductor has ordered the gaseous nitrogen purge of the solid rocket booster aft skirts to begin, and the chase aircraft presently at Patrick Air Force Base should have been ordered to start their engines. The NASA test conductor has asked safety to verify that the closeout crew is at the last impact limit line roadblock. This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. We are presently holding past the normal time in which we would pick up the countdown because of a problem with the number 3 fuel cell. A troubleshooting team is working on that fuel cell at the present time to determine whether or not the excess water production by the fuel cell is a problem. We expect to have an announcement in a couple of minutes about that. At the present time, all other elements of the launch team appear to be ready to support the launch, the only problem being with the number 3 fuel cell. We are standing by to await the results of an analysis of that problem. This is Shuttle Launch Control. We are in the process of dumping the program which is in the backup flight computer. It's called the backup flight software, and are going to re-enter that program into the computer. We had thought that this particular problem had gone away, but apparently it had not. And we are also continuing to look at the problem with the number 3 fuel cell. To be that the production of water is higher than it normally should be, and the problem with the backup computer may well be solved with the reprogramming of it. It's approximately a 7-minute operation, and we have about 45 minutes remaining in our hold capability at this time. So the countdown stands at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. This is Shuttle Launch Control.
This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. The one problem which we were taking a look at, which was the number 3 fuel cell, has been determined to be satisfactory at this time, and it appears that we will be able to go ahead with the countdown from the standpoint of the fuel cells. However, we are still in the process of working the problem with the backup flight software. That software has been dumped and is being compared by the engineers at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. We're standing by to hear whether that comparison is satisfactory and whether or not we can pick up the countdown in the next few minutes. Both the commander of John Young and pilot Bob Crippen are involved in this process of comparing of the flight programs. This is shuttle launch control.
We suggest that we don't do any further action until we have a better handle on this. That depends on the evaluation of the data at Houston and the data retrieval and the review here. Data retrieval here is in process. Are we talking about 15, 20 minutes? Stand by.
What OTC Houston?
212. Go ahead. We're within 38 minutes on IMU. 38 minutes, Roger, thank you.
OTC Houston.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we think we can stretch the IMU constraints. The platforms are looking real good. We have one more suggestion on the BFS before we go all the way to IPL. That's to take him down to op 0, mode him to halt, mode him to run, then try 101 again.
Okay, why don't you proceed with that? Copy. Okay, CDR PLP. Yep. On the BFS keyboard. Op 000.
Received, though, just recently. One of the major constraints that has to do with the extension of a hold or the time that it takes has to do with the inertial measurement unit, the pre-alignment of that for flight. That is the constraint which originally said that we had only about 50 minutes left remaining in the hold while we were in this particular hold. We have heard from Houston that the platform appears to be so stable that it's possible we could go possibly beyond that without recycling to the T-minus 51 point in the count to begin that pre-flight alignment once again. In Houston and here at the Kennedy Space Center, they're continuing to work that software problem to determine whether or not we'll be able to go ahead with the launch this morning. This is shuttle launch control. made in the next few minutes in order to reconfigure and get into the proper posture to go forward again. One of the determining factors in the ability of us to hold is the inertial measurement units. We are coming to the point approximately 20 minutes from now when we would have to go back and realign them, and that requires going back, at least for that, to the T-minus 51 minute part. However, most of the systems would be held at the T-minus 20 minute point, and that is what the hold clock would say. At the present time, we are dumping the general purpose computers and having them analyzed at Houston. This is shuttle launch control. This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. We have been holding for approximately 35 minutes now. We have some concern now about the IMU pre-flight alignment. However, no decision has been made that we need to go farther back into the countdown at this present time. We have had a concern from the people watching the fuel cells that too much load was being placed on them, and we have now switched back to sharing with the ground power system. Present time, we're working the problem both here in the cabin at Houston at the Mission Control Center and here in the Kennedy Space Center with whether or not we have a proper backup software load in the flight computers. We expect to be hearing back something in the next few minutes about what should be done as far as continuing to hold at this particular point in the countdown. This is shuttle launch control. This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. We have been holding now for approximately 45 minutes and have approximately 16 minutes remaining in the time before we would have to realign the IMUs. We have been told by Houston that they're extremely stable, and we may be able to extend the hold slightly beyond what is normally contemplated. At the present time, we have not had a reading as to how we're listening now to Houston, where they are talking about what may be the possible problem that caused the backup software to look as though it might not be satisfactory. But at the present time, we do not have a determination as to how long we may hold at this particular point. There has to be a decision in the near future as to whether to go back to a different point in the countdown. But at the present time, we're at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. This is shuttle launch control.
DC Houston. Follow on 183. Copy.
This is shuttle launch control. We are presently at T-minus 9 minutes and holding, but a decision has been made to recycle the count to the T-minus 20 minute point. This is a point at which we can hold for a longer period than at the T-minus 90 minutes or 9-minute point. It also includes, though, a realignment of the inertial measurement unit. This occurs normally in the countdown at the T-minus 51-minute point. However, the other units on board the orbiter and on board the ground, the propulsion and the tanking and that sort of thing, can be held at the T-minus 20-minute point, even though we go back to 51 in the IMU align mode. We have not had a resolution yet of what the problem is with the backup flight computer programs, and are waiting for that resolution before going further. But right now, we are changing the clock back to the T-minus 20-minute point in the countdown, and this means that we will go ahead and also do an inertial measurement unit realignment, which occurred at the T-minus 51-minute point normally. This is shuttle launch control.
All personnel, we will be going to T-minus 20 minutes and hold at that point. T-minus 20 minutes and hold at that point. When we pick up in the book again, we will be picking up all of the steps that are shown coming out of the hold at T-minus 20 minutes. We'll repeat the book for all the steps from there on down.
Well, that's a message to all the personnel here at Launch Control.
Also, COTC, we have no plan at this present time to send in a close our crew or open the hatch or make any moves of that sort.
This is shuttle launch control.
Launch control.
At the present time, we are reconfiguring the countdown clock to the T-minus 20-minute hold point. The countdown clock has been moving. However, it is just part of the procedure for recycling the clock and has nothing to do with actually counting down in the countdown. We do not yet have an estimated liftoff time. They're in the process of trying to calculate that. We have a number of constraints. The propellants which are on board are not a constraint. We can hold at the flight mast as long as necessary. One of the main constraints is that we have to go back and do a pre-flight alignment of the inertial measurement unit. This occurs at the T-minus 51 point in the countdown. And this can be done without recycling all of the other elements back that far. The other elements of the launch vehicle and the ground support can stay at the T-minus 20-minute point. One of the main constraints as far as picking a launch time is the crew rules. The doctors have determined that the crew should not remain in a horizontal position in their seats on the pad for longer than 6 hours, and do not want to have them awake between the time that they're awakened and the time they have their first sleep period in space longer than 20 hours. At the present time, this is not a serious threat to recycling the countdown. However, it is one thing which has to be considered. At the present time, we are standing by for an estimate of when we can target the countdown for. We have not had a resolution from Houston or from here at the Kennedy Space Center of whether or not the backup flight software is a proper configuration or not. It has been determined that one portion of that computer program has never been run before in the simulations which have been conducted, and that is presently being looked at very hard. It is being put through the facilities in Houston, which determine whether or not the computer programs are valid or not. So we're standing by here for a determination of a target liftoff time and also for a resolution of what needs to be done on the flight, the backup flight programs. We're at T-minus 20 minutes and holding. This is shuttle launch control.
At the present time, the launch team and launch director George Page are discussing the beginning of the inertial measurement unit pre-alignment. Once we start the pre-alignment, the earliest that the launch could take place would be approximately 81 minutes from that point. If we should not be able to go today, it probably would be necessary to recycle until at least Sunday. One of the constraints in the preparation of the vehicle calls for a 24-hour conditioning period for the liquid hydrogen tank once we have filled it with hydrogen and then drained it again. If we stick to that conditioning criteria, we would not be able to make the beginning of the window tomorrow. At the present time, a discussion is going on as to how soon we can start the pre-flight alignment to give us a chance for a launch today. During that period when we're doing the pre-flight alignment, which takes 51 minutes, and then transitioning to the launch, the final launch ground programs, it would take approximately 81 minutes from that point before a launch could occur. What we're hoping will happen is that during that period, a determination will be made of how to solve the problem with the backup computer not communicating properly with the four ascent computers. At the present time, the program from the backup computer is being analyzed and run on comparison systems at Houston to try and determine whether it is proper. So we're standing by to begin a realignment of the inertial measurement unit at the T-minus 20-minute point in the count and holding. This is shuttle launch control.
Thank you. I'm going back to 152. plan now is to dump and evaluate the data on the backup flight. We believe backup flight computer. We believe that will take us approximately an hour to an hour and 10 minutes. Then we're going to do a one-shot upload and pick up the count at T-minus 20 where we do transition. OTC DPS. Okay. Go ahead, DPS. I need CDR over on 152 to pick up on the BFS load. Okay. CDR can't go to 152. He only has a airlink. Okay. What are we restricted to then? 212 and what else? 212. 212 and 212. Okay, I'll get everybody over on 212. Okay. OTC, Contingency, 212. Just stand by a moment. Crew, do you understand what our plan is here? It would mean that then we have approximately 30 minutes remaining in the countdown. 20 minutes of count time and a 10-minute hold at T-minus 9 before we would hit zero. We're talking about 1 hour and 50 minutes, 150 before we would go. Yes, on 212. DPS, let us complete our IMU pre-flight alignment prep, so we'll give it over to you. Go ahead, OTC, pick up on the steps. Go ahead, GNC. Okay, I can verify completion at steps 15-36 through 47 and non-performance on 48 through 56. So 55 and 56 is verified. Understand. Your pre-flight align preps are complete at this time. Understand. Okay, CLP. Go ahead. Okay, did are the IMU folks gonna wait now for a go from DIPS to kick off their pre-flight line? Yes, they will. It's the OTC. Roger that. Okay. GNC, you copy? I copy. Waiting on you to go. Copy. DPS, OTC. Go ahead. It's your wire. Okay. CDR on panel 06. Go. GPC mode 5 switch to halt. Got the big X on circuit 3. Copy. GPC output 5 switch to normal. Stand by 1. Second. Okay, 5 is the normal. IPL source switch to mass member unit 1. Okay, we're going to one mark. Okay, it's in 1. Copy. IPL 5, push button, press and release. Okay, it's press and release, IPL's up. Give me a verbal umpire report. Copy on panel C3, BFC CRT select switch 3+1. That's verified. BFC CRT display switch on. That's verified. On panel 06, DEU3 switch to load momentarily. Stand by 1.
At the present time, work is underway to get ready for the pre-flight alignment of the inertial measurement unit. That comes at the T-minus 51 minute point in the count. However, that's approximately 91 minutes from a liftoff. We're in the process now of resetting the clock back to the 1 hour T-minus 60 minute point in the countdown. This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 40 minutes, 5 seconds, and counting. At the present time, we have had approximately 10 minutes of the beginning of the pre-flight alignment of the inertial measurement unit. The clock is running in a way in which we will come out at a T0 and a liftoff at 10:20 a.m. this morning. Everything going very smoothly as we have recycled our countdown clock and are catching up with those tasks which need to be done in order to bring us back in a configuration to support the launch. We have not heard back yet as to the validity of the backup flight software, which is being compared at the present time in Houston at the Johnson Space Center. And we're standing by to hear that and expect to hear it approximately a half hour from now. At the present time, we're working towards a liftoff at 10:20 a.m. this morning. This is shuttle launch control.
Okay, the new surface wind is 120 at 8. And just for your information, we are working on a flight plan. We'll change some things in the cap to get you to bid on time.
This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 28 minutes, 15 seconds, and counting. Astronauts Bob Crippen and John Young have just been going through a comm check with Houston. Things going along very well here as we go once again through this portion of the countdown. The primary purpose of it is to complete the pre-flight alignment of the inertial measurement unit. Looking for a launch as early as possible, but probably approximately 10:20 a.m. this morning. This is shuttle launch control.
If the truth were known, we really delayed this launch so we could get the burritos on time.
I figured that. That's affirmative. CDPS, OTC. DPS, go ahead. You ready for VFS transfer? Affirmative. Okay.
This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 20 minutes and holding. The NASA test director has just conducted a check with all of the major elements of the launch team to determine that they are ready to resume the count at the T-minus 20-minute point in.
Go. Okay, pre-flight line is complete, ready for
we have just had a report that the pre-flight alignment is complete on the inertial measurement unit. That is the one milestone we're waiting for, and we will pick up the count momentarily. The countdown will resume at the T-minus 20-minute point. We will count down to the T-minus 9-minute point where there ordinarily is a 10-minute built-in hold. And at that point we will hold, but it may not be for the entire 10 minutes. We are standing by to hear a time for resuming the count at this moment. The countdown clock will resume its counting at the T-minus 20-minute point in just a few seconds from now. We have completed the pre-flight alignment of the inertial measurement unit. At the same time, in Houston, troubleshooting of the problem we have had with communication between the backup computer and the other flight computers has been going on. And we're at T-minus 20 minutes and counting. A purge of the fuel cells, which provide both electricity for the orbiter and drinking water for the crew, is being performed. At this point, the computer program is changed to a program known as Major Mode 101. which is the terminal countdown configuration. At this point, the primary computer is compared with the proper onboard computer to ensure that they are ready for launch. At the present time, we are planning on counting down to the T-minus 9-minute point, and we have not yet determined how long that particular hold might be. It could range from the normal 10-minute build-in hold to something much less than that. We're standing by still to receive word from Houston of the validity of the program and the way in which and ensure that the computers are talking to each other properly.
Ready, fuel cell adjustment is complete. Okay. We have recommendations that we recycle back to 20 and then recycle back to get the crew out of the vehicle. And consider...
This is Shuttle Launch Control. An announcement follows in 30 seconds.
We're going to rerun sequence 15 as we ran it before to get us back to 20 with the indulgence crew, and then we'll bring in the personnel to get the hatch open.
This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 13 minutes, 15 seconds, and counting. A determination is being made as to the resolution of the problem that we have had with the backup computer. Once again, it is not communicating with the other computers on board. At the present time, preparations are being made to prepare for terminating the countdown for a recycle. However, we're standing by to wait for a final decision.
TLS OTC. Yes, go ahead and stop the clock. Affirmative.
Being held between the management personnel in the firing room concerning the options which are open and the decision on scrubbing for today. The problem which has plagued us in this launch attempt has been the inability of the backup flight computer on board the orbiter to communicate properly with the other flight computers. This is what had caused a delay in the launch, and then we have recycled to wait for a resolution from Houston. We're standing by now for an announcement.
COI, OTC.
The launch director, George Page, and Center Director Dick Smith have just announced that we will scrub the launch attempt for today. We will stop the clock probably at the T-minus 9-minute point and send out a crew to open the hatch of the orbiter and take the crew back to the astronaut quarters. The earliest time in which we could possibly reschedule the launch will be for Sunday morning at 6:50 a.m. What this is dependent on, of course, is resolution of the problem which we have had in today's launch attempt. That problem has not been traced to whether it is strictly a software problem or whether it's possibly has something to do with the hardware. What has occurred has been that there are 5 flight computers on board the orbiter. the normal configuration for a launch is that 4 of them are programmed for the ascent run, and the 5th has a backup program in it. Each time as we went down the countdown, there was an inability of the backup computer to communicate properly with the other 4 general purpose computers. We have attempted to check out the program. The program that was in the backup computer was the proper program, the one that we had planned to put there. However, what that does not say is whether there is some problem that is in that program which is not understood at this moment. In any case, we have to recycle, and we'll have a determination probably later today as to whether to reschedule for Sunday. The reason that Sunday would be the earliest possible time we could schedule for has to do with the conditioning of the liquid hydrogen tank in the external tank. This is the tank which supplies the fuel to the main engines on the orbiter. The liquid hydrogen which is placed in the tank is a very, very cold minus 423 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. In order to ensure that there be no damage to the metal in the tank, there has to be at least a 24-hour conditioning period after the liquid hydrogen is drained from that tank before liquid hydrogen can again be placed in it. Since we are this late in the launch window at this time, it will not be possible to drain that and then have the proper conditioning period and then reload it in time to schedule a launch for tomorrow. So at the present time, we have terminated our launch attempt for today and will reschedule for no earlier than Sunday morning at 6:50 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is Shuttle Launch Control. The next steps which will be taken in recycling for another launch attempt, the earliest of which would be on Sunday morning, will be having the team come back into the pad to open up the hatch and take the astronaut crew members, John Young and Bob Crippen, back to the astronaut quarters. Following that, the external tanks, cryogenic propellants, the liquid hydrogen, the liquid oxygen, will be drained back into the large dewars on the pad. And then the vehicle will be safed and put into a configuration to recycle it. At the present time, there has been no determination of what the problem actually was as far as why the backup computer was not communicating properly with the other computers on board the orbiter. An announcement of when the next launch attempt will be, of course, depends on having resolved that problem. But the earliest launch date would be Sunday morning at 6:50 a.m. The reason for that is that the hydrogen tank on board the external tank requires at least a 24-hour conditioning period. It had been proposed that possibly propellants could be held in the tank to avoid that. However, if it went as long as 2 days, we would not have sufficient cryogenics at the center to support that. So at the present time, we are having the astronaut crew go out to the pad to open up the door on the orbiter and take astronauts John Young and Bob Crippen out and back to the astronaut quarters. This will be followed by detanking the external tank and safing of the vehicle for another attempt. The earliest possible launch date would be Sunday morning, 6:50 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is Shuttle Launch Control.
I'll be
This is
bringing
Shuttle
the
Launch
astronaut.
Control. At the present time, the closeout crew, which previously had sealed up the hatch and gotten the astronauts properly connected to the orbiter, are on their way back to the pad with the astronaut van. This operation should take approximately a half hour. It has been determined to leave the hydrogen and the oxygen tanks in the replenish mode as the safest configuration for the egress of the astronauts. The entire process will be exact reversal of what was done when they entered the orbiter this morning. At the present time, the astronaut van and the closeout crew are on their way to the pad and are expected to arrive at the pad just a few minutes from now. They will then go up the elevators to the orbiter access arm and across the orbiter access arm, where they will have to take out the thermal protection plugs which they had previously placed in it, attach the door handle, and then open the hatch. The closeout crew has reached the pad surface now and is moving toward the elevator to go up to the orbiter access arm level. We expect approximately a half-hour operation to take the crew, open up the hatch and get the crew out and headed down the elevator for the return trip to the astronaut quarters. Immediately following the removal of the astronauts, the next steps will include a draining of the liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen tanks back into the pad doors. At the present time, we have had an announcement in the firing room that we are scheduled for no earlier than Sunday morning. This is Shuttle Launch Control.
This is Shuttle Control Houston. Flight Director Neil Hutchinson, accompanied by Data Processing Systems Engineer Randy Stone, will conduct a news conference from the large auditorium at the Johnson Space Center. This briefing will start no earlier than 11 a.m. Central Time. Reporters at other centers will be able to ask questions. This is Shuttle Control Houston.
Technicians request a PIR, you'll give them the number. I'll be standby. Okay. That's a QC in the white room. It's DNQC. Yes, sir. Go ahead. You have the paper up there, and you're gonna verify this setup to 19. Is that right? You stand by. With your concurrence, I'd like to get somebody to replace me up here if you think we're out of the critical time. No, we get the crew in. All right, copy. MTD, ISO. This is NASA Quality in the White Room. Go ahead. Yes, sir, we have the procedure right here. We'll verify it as we go. Okay, you can take care of it, too, but no problem. Okay. All we want is this EOTC. All we want is a verification when you're through. We don't want to hold you up by talking it out.
This is Shuttle Launch Control. An announcement follows in 30 seconds. This is Shuttle Launch Control. The closeout crew in the White Room is in the process of attaching the door handle, which will be used for opening the hatch on the orbiter in order for the prime crew astronauts John Young and Bob Crippen to leave their seats. At the present time, they have gotten their surgical masks out and are prepared to put them in place prior to actually going into the orbiter. Once the door is open, the astronaut support pilot will be going in along with technicians in order to disconnect the many connections which the astronauts have to their spacecraft. Most of the connections have to do with the biomedical sensors and the life support systems, but also such things as the communications and other electronic hookups. At the present time, the thermal protection system plugs have been released, and the crew is in the process of withdrawing the latches, which will allow them to open up the hatch. This operation takes approximately a half hour in order to get the hatch open, and they have just announced that they're ready to open the hatch at this time and been given the go-ahead to open it. As soon as it's open, some of the technicians will enter, and we're probably about 15 minutes away from seeing astronauts John Young and Bob Crippen reemerge from the orbiter. This is Shuttle Launch Control.
CMPS OTC. DCL, I believe they just flung the hatch open. And that would be a normal occurrence. That's affirmative. The hatch is coming open at this time. Okay. So what happened was the DP sensor went negative. Oh. Okay, we're going to put the air hose in first thing. Right. DCL copies. OTC is close our crew. Go ahead. We are ready to enter the hatch and get to the crew. Okay, proceed, enter, and safe both the seats and report completion and get enough flooring in the mid-deck in order to get them out. We'd like to switch the safe to once we get the asp in there on the neck. Okay, he's on his way in now, and he has the catapult keys with him. Okay, I got another one for you. To put a plastic over the clam module hatch opening with residue, with low residue mystic 7000 tape. But be sure not to drape the plastic so that we don't seal the bottom there. Copy. We'll be doing that a little later until we get the cover. Yeah, might as well get them out first. Okay. CCFM. Go ahead, CFM. Okay, on that plastic taping to the hatch, that's to be taped to the inner hatch at the top only. Is that right? Not to the tile. Yeah, you copy that, right? I copy that. Okay, this is CDR. I sure appreciate you guys trying that thing, and we'll try again as soon as we can. I guess Sunday's early date.
Okay, John, we're sorry we couldn't bring it through.
Yeah, this is really was beautiful there for a while, boy.
Yeah, it was running good.
Yeah. Thank you, Chuck. I'll see you guys later.
Roger that.
ULC.
Go ahead.
Okay, did ASP get in yet?
No.
Okay. And OTC ASP.
Okay, I guess we'd like you to turn the drivers and logics off on 1415 at overhead 1415 at 16, and also the ohms engines off.
Okay, make sure you turn the drivers off before you turn the logic off.
Roger that. That's in work, and we have the seat safe at this time. Say you have the cards put on them, Ben?
Negative. Seat pins are in. Okay, drivers coming off 014 first. 015. 016. Okay, logic coming off. 014. 015. 016.
This is shuttle launch control. An announcement follows in 30 seconds.
Valves off on 14 and
She got left one off. Right one off.
Okay, now one other thing I'd like, and I'd need a time on this. XL1 breakers, 2 breaker, and XL3 switch. If you give me a mark when you take them off.
XL1, mark.
Okay, 160721.
XL2, mark.
160725.
Okay, it's XL.
This is shuttle launch control. Astronaut Bob Crippen has just emerged from the hatch in the orbiter, the first of the 2 prime crew members to leave the orbiter. The orbiter door was opened and the air hose put in place, and then the little walkway that goes across to prevent any damage to the seals on the door. At the present time, astronaut Bob Crippen is being prepared for the trip back down to the pad. He has to have some sort of booties put over his shoes. At the present time inside the orbiter, astronaut John Young is in the process of getting out of his seat and should be emerging from the hatch any moment.
Quality, I'll verify 34 and 35, 36, 37, 38.
As soon as the astronauts have emerged and have been prepared, they will go back down the elevator to the ground level of the pad, get in the astronaut van, and for the trip back to the astronaut quarters at the O&C building here at the Kennedy Space Center. At the present time, the announcement which has been made in the Launch Control Center was simply that the earliest possible launch date would now be Sunday morning. This is shuttle launch control.
Quality, we'll verify 41, 42. Yes, OTC. Yes, OTC.
Go ahead.
You get the suit stands off,
Didn't work.
okay. OTC, this is MQC. Go ahead. Did you get the panels L5 and L6 power switches off on sequence 40? Not yet. Putting in the good old D-ring pins and all that goodies on 39 right now. this is closeout crew leader. Go ahead, Okay, commander's coming out at this time.
This is Shuttle Launch Control. An announcement follows in 30 seconds.
We're working 46 and 47 right now, following.
This is Shuttle Launch Control. Astronaut John Young has exited the hatch on the orbiter and has just removed his helmet in preparation for going back down the elevator to the ground level there at the pad. The clock here has been recycled to the T-minus 20-minute point. This is a very stable hold area for the launch, and everything had to be put into a safe configuration for the exit of the astronauts. At the present time, the closeout crew is preparing the astronauts for the trip back down the elevators to the ground level. They'll be going down in just a couple of minutes. They have to clean up the area there to stow the various items that were required when the astronauts came on board. One of the things that is kept up at that point, which was put on when they arrived, was or brought up with them, was the Snoopy hat, and which goes under the helmet. Astronaut John Young walking out of the White Room now and prepared to cross the access arm and then down the elevators. The next steps in the continuation of safing the vehicle will include draining of the propellants from the external tank back into the hydrogen and the oxygen tanks. The crew is crossing the 195-foot level now, and they have reached the elevators and are in preparation to go down to the ground level. So at the present time, the orbiter cabin has been put back into the condition prior to the time the astronauts entered, and the astronauts have left that level of the pad and are on their way back to the astronaut quarters at the ONC building. This is Shuttle Launch Control.